This is the Typeface prototype lecture, and we're looking at the letter A by Adrian Frutiger, and this was a drawing for his universe alphabet. We can see that he's inspecting the individuality of the stroke and the characteristics of where things get thinner and thicker, very geometric and very elegant in its flow. Next, we're looking at Paul Renner's preliminary drawings for Futura that were developed around 1927. This is a very geometric sans serif typeface that embodies characteristics of the Bauhaus, although this typeface was more practical and commercially viable. Renner, who viewed Futura as an appropriate typeface for the machine age, streamlined the alphabet by eliminating the tail of lowercase t and j. They're just straight lines. Also, look at how he developed this typeface. Observe Renner's way that he played with his letter forms. Look at the X height and how he varied the different widths of the X height. And look at the round versus right angles. Next, we're looking at Jules Schmidt's preliminary drawings for condensed grotesque, which was made in the Netherlands in 1926. If you inspect the techniques he used to figure out the geometry of the letter forms, he uses the grid and circular forms to help him determine the X height, weight, and shape. We're looking at Nebbiolo's Fregio Meccano, which was developed in 1930. Nebbiolo was a type foundry that developed equipment and typefaces in Turin. They explored the variations of the shoulder, the cap line, the weight. They used a grid format to develop the visual components of the letter form. We see the letter form broken down on the right side. We can see that with these individual shapes, they could build a tall A, a wide A, and more medium typefaces. This was an Art Nouveau signwriter's guide that was made by the Rotterdam Schilder School. They created alphabets to be copied by hand sign painters circa 1900. Inspect the ways that the designers approached the X height and stylized strokes and serifs. We see that the strokes are angular, and we can see that the obvious X height is right about here. On the left side, we're looking at Herman Snellman's Optotype, developed in 1875. If we look at it closely, we can see that this typeface was developed based on a grid format. You can see the little pencil drawings underneath the letters. You've probably seen this sign before somewhere. You can see that it's used for optometrists to check out or clinically determine vision capabilities. On the lower right side, we're looking at Ken Barber's Castaways, which was developed in 2001. The font was based on Las Vegas-style signage, very much like you would see on old light-up signs. Although this font has a hand script appearance, it uses a grid to aid in its baseline, mean line, cap line, and X height. Look at the X height and how it stays rigid amongst all the letter forms. Also the cap line, and also the baseline. This font was published by House Industries and now is a digital typeface. We're looking at Martin Major's Surya, which was made in 1996. It was drawn on a train from Berlin to Warsaw. In 2000, the font was released. Handwritten prototypes are the basis for many digital typefaces. They're based on the calligraphic tradition. And we can see that Major was looking at these very expressive ways of developing a letter. He also used a baseline, a mean line, a cap line, and X height to aid in the design of this font. We can see the X height here. We can see the baseline here. We can see the cap line. We're looking at an identity logo design for an Australian brand called Rio Coffee. The designer was aiming for a modern clean look and a mid-century edge, clean and geometric. So these are the preliminary drawings, and we can see that the preliminary drawings are an important tool for font development. This is the final logo design for Rio Coffee. Logo designs often employ grid-based design techniques to help with accuracy. This aids the designer in rendering and finalizing designs via Illustrator. These are letterform designs done by Ellen Lupton's Type 1 class at Maryland Institute College of Art. All fonts were based on a grid system and had restrictions to stay within the grid, e.g. no diagonals, no curves, no shoulders, etc. So they were based on the idea of a bitmap font, and due to their rectilinear style, they appear to be heavily influenced by Dish Deal. Let's take a look at the Dish Deal typefaces. On the left, we're looking at Vilmos Huszar around 1916, and on the right, we're looking at Theo van Doesburg circa 1919. Dish Deal letter forms had all right angles, almost like slabs or rectangles. They very much have similar characteristics to bitmap letter forms. These are student examples we're looking at here. I want the students in the class to use the graph paper provided to help them develop the X height, the cap line, to understand the descenders and the ascenders. And we can look at this Zephyr font that was made by Alicia DeHart. We can see here that she's made a rigid X height, that she has a definite cap line where all of her ascenders reach to. And we can see that her descenders drop, again, 2 points on that graph. She also developed her numeric forms. Students are also going to have to make a word with their typeface. She decided to make the word wind. She also added the number 72. It is also the student's job to name the typeface. If we look, we can see that Alicia named her typeface Zephyr. This is another student example, and this student named this typeface American Super Dream Wow. We can see that he used his letter forms to spell out the word bad, we. So he actually spelled out 2 short words instead of 1 4-letter word, which I required. He also spelled his girlfriend's name at the time, Mimi. This student developed a whole alphabet of capitals and a whole alphabet of lowercase. These are 2 more student examples. You can see that they spelled out the word Ben on the left side and Grace on the right side. But at the end of this project, what we're going to do is we're going to take our graph paper, we're going to photograph it, we're going to develop these font prototypes on the computer in Illustrator. We're going to take time and we're going to use a pen tool. We're going to turn these into vector images that will then be able to be final typefaces.